Hello, friends. There's three common reasons that school boards fail to have an impact that they desire. They confuse governance with management, they operate without a shared language or purpose, and they often don't see patterns until it's too late. And look, none of that's because people don't care. Most board members are really dedicated and they bring experience and commitment and goodwill. But they're often thrown into complex conversations, finance, safeguarding, strategic direction, with little clarity on their actual role. They're given responsibility, but not the tools. They're expected to lead, but not to manage. They're asked to steer, but not row the boat. And in this grey area, it's no wonder that board meetings can drift from strategic to operational, from purposeful to procedural, from governance to grievance. I've been leading international schools in Europe and Africa, Middle East, Far East and Southeast Asia, and working with diverse school boards as well as serving on boards myself. And these challenges with governance good practice have vexed me for years. There are some great trainers and terrific books on governance, a little bit dry, I admit, but let's be honest, most board members have enough to do with a day job and serving on the board, let alone dedicating precious energy to hone their governance knowledge and skills wading through a book. And that's why I designed the board deck. It's a compass for strategic, values-driven governance, but really succinct, visual and tactile. Think of the board deck as a conversation tool for governance clarity. It makes the invisible work of governance more visible, more structured, more practical. Or let's look at it through another way, through Simon Sinek's lens, the why. We know that at the heart of every good school is a board of governors or trustees, composed of skilled and experienced individuals from varied backgrounds and industries. But they don't always speak the same language. But remember that their expertise in their day job is not the same skill set that's required on the board. Bringing in an auditor onto the board or an expert in IT systems doesn't mean they'll be doing their professional work when serving on the board. And a common challenge is navigating the complex roles and responsibilities of school governance without necessarily being educational experts. They are there to ask the right questions, to hold the long view and safeguard the school's mission, but not getting into the weeds of the work itself. That's where micromanagement often leaches into board work and where good governance starts to crumble. So how can we ensure consistent practices of good governance with such diverse backgrounds and where there may be constant board turnover? The answer is by providing board members with purposely succinct and insightful information that can be used to promote discussion so that boards can be more reflective, more proactive, and more impactful. Just enough information to be insightful, not so much to be a book full of unread pages. And what? Well, the board deck is structured around 6 core governance principles that lead to 9 board profiles, supported by board practices that clearly illustrate good practice and opportunities for reflection and growth, and carefully curated scenarios that generate discussion, that builds a shared understanding of governance in action. Okay, let's unpack the how a little more. One of my fundamental drivers is the desire to make things more visible. It's not about being visual learners, it's about the sheer volume of data our brains can consume visually. And when something is there on the table in front of us or on a whiteboard, we avoid assumptions or interpretations. It's not about what I interpret from what I think you said. It's a triangulation of ideas, a clarity in the message. So the board deck is built around bringing clarity to the work of the board through 6 governance principles. 3 principles that form a kind of continuum of strategic approaches: inform, inquire, inspire. And 3 principles that form a continuum of the board's influence and reach: engage, enlighten, empower. This creates a 3x3 matrix, which I refer to as the 9 map of governance. A 3x3 matrix of 9 roles, from fiduciary guardian to strategic questioner to empowering steward. This brings a somewhat visual approach to how boards operate and, importantly, how these different roles may be important at different times. It brings clarity to the roles and responsibilities of governance. Now, you remember we said that board members often come from diverse backgrounds. So an auditor, let's say, might approach board work as they approach their day job, with a certain mental frame. And in their day job, they're surrounded by other auditors who think and act in exactly the same way, and therefore don't necessarily recognize that there may be other forces in action or alternative approaches. Or to put it another way, if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. By creating and making visible this 9 map of governance, now everyone sitting around the board table can at least see the different modes of governance. No single one is better than the others. They're different, and some apply better to certain situations. But being aware of these differences is the big mental shift for people, because awareness is the first step in being able to intentionally shift gears, shift profiles, if you like, to recognize that a change of thinking or approach may be necessary or desirable. But that's only possible when you can actually see the different roles and responsibilities as a complete picture. Imagine as a board you're trying to complete a jigsaw puzzle. If everyone has a single puzzle piece and they have to wait their turn to see if their one piece will fit, that's not a very effective way to complete the puzzle. But now imagine if everyone can see all of the pieces and can see the big picture, then everyone around the table can select pieces that best fit. So the principal and profile cards help trustees reflect on their impact, their contributions, and areas for growth. Each of these succinct principles of good governance are expanded into board practices, a way of sharing good practice with clear examples to guide and stimulate discussion. Each practice is clearly defined and explained with concrete governance behaviors and linked to real actions and good practice. These cards don't just tell you what good governance is, they show you what it looks like, what it feels like, and how it sounds in the boardroom. Each of the principles can be framed as a corresponding standard to help boards identify, to monitor, and track their own performance. And these are supported by a carefully curated set of scenarios, realistic tensions that boards face, such as overreach or ethical dilemmas or cultural misalignment. The scenarios are a great way to generate dialogue and an opportunity to bring to life shared understanding of the different values and perspectives, but without the pressure of a real crisis. The scenarios are actually written from slightly different versions of information. This mimics the reality that everyone on the board brings a different lens through which they see things, or have different insights, or indeed different information. And only when seen collectively is the whole story apparent. And because life is rarely simple, complication cards add a twist to the scenario. They help illuminate limited thinking or blind spots and offer reframes. And you may have heard that the art of good governance is in asking better questions. There's a common term used in governance circles about asking generative questions, a way to scratch below the surface level to better understand the underlying dynamics. But what does this look like? Well, what better way to reframe your thinking than modeling thoughtful, frame-shifting questions through the Inquire cards, generative questions to help gain insights beyond the surface level. Because the art of good governance really is about asking better questions. Whether you're onboarding new trustees, running a board retreat, or navigating a sticky issue with your head of school, the board deck is there and is built to help you. It helps you create a shared language to clarify strategic purpose, reflect on governance effectiveness, and build trust between the board and leadership. because good governance is a culture. It's not a checkbox. Great boards don't just react to reports or policies. They build relationships. They ask better questions. They link today's decisions to tomorrow's mission. The board deck isn't about making governance complicated. It's about bringing clarity to the roles and responsibilities, making it visible, making it work for the school, the leadership team, and the students that you serve. Board culture isn't built in one meeting, but it can start with one conversation, and the board deck helps you have that conversation by design. You can learn more about the board deck and how it fits into the full learning deck concept, including leadership strategy, culture and learning alignment tools for schools. That's at learning-deck.com.